Welcome to Beyond the Quo, where we break boundaries, redefine success, and inspire leaders to live authentically and boldly. I'm your host, Stacey Luces, and today we're diving deep into a topic that combines courage, advocacy, and systemic change: human trafficking and the tireless work to support vulnerable youth. I don't know if you knew this, but I did some research for this episode, and the statistics are startling. So human trafficking is a $150 billion criminal industry that impacts over 27.6 million people globally. It's not just an international issue. It's happening here in the U.S., often hidden in plain sight. Vulnerable populations, especially foster youth and the LGBTQ plus young adults, are at an alarmingly higher risk of exploitation. For example, 1 in 7 child trafficking cases in the U.S. involves runaways, and within 48 hours of being on the streets, 1 in 3 homeless youth is approached by traffickers. Joining me today is Alex Ortiz. He is the Director of Development and Human Trafficking Regional Advocacy at the FLITE Center, which is a transformative organization providing education, housing, and employment resources to vulnerable youth. Alex's journey from corporate leadership to nonprofit advocacy is a powerful testament to what it means to redefine leadership, something we love here on this show, not as a climb to the top, but as a commitment to lifting others. Welcome, Alex.
Thank you so much.
You're
I really
welcome.
appreciate it, Stacey.
Awesome. It's good to have you. It took us forever and a day to get to
Yes,
this
it did.
episode.
Well, the holidays will do that, right?
Yes.
It'll make you delay things.
For sure. We were like, Happy Thanksgiving, and then have Merry Christmas, and then Happy New Year.
When can we make this happen?
This is awesome that we are finally getting to sit down. And I know that it is Human Trafficking Awareness Month.
Which obviously that's a great thing that it actually happened, and things happen
Right.
for a reason.
Absolutely. But this is a heavy topic. You know,
Yes,
every
it is.
time we bring this up, people squirm. They are a
Yes.
little bit uncomfortable. And I think given the scope of what I just explained, I think that has a lot to do with it. And they think also that it is something that is far away, far removed from them.
Yes.
But what you're showing me, and when we talked a couple months ago when we met,
Yeah.
it is close to home. But how do you take a heavy topic like this and make it like real?
Yeah. That's always, and thank you for that, because that is the thing that those of us that are in this space struggle with. And I think it's very important that those that have the opportunity to speak about this topic come from a place of knowledge, of experience. And I think it's very fortunate that those that are with FLITE Center in particular, and many other agencies, come from lived experience, because I don't think there's any better way for someone to be able to be empathetic to how somebody that might not know anything about human trafficking, exploitation, abuse, suicidal ideation, mental health issues can be able to grapple with these topics. And so it's taken me some time to be able to kind of formulate my approach to speaking about this, so that people don't immediately kind of shut down and put up those barriers, because that's the biggest obstacle that we face, is people not being able to take a second and just listen, and listen with open eyes and open hearts, so that they can take this back into the community. Because the biggest issue also is isolation, is keeping those things inside and not using it as a way of kind of instantiating a movement towards change, and so that people can rise up and be more of an advocate and speak out with these topics.
Yeah. And, I mean, living in South Florida, obviously we see signs in the restroom, in the airports, right? I know when I worked in Washington, D.C. Many years ago for Homeland Security, this was one of the things, and it's probably about 15 years, maybe 14, the See Something, Hear Something, the Blue Campaign. These were, I don't want to say new topics at the time, but they were certainly on that particular administration's agenda. And so by virtue of it being a priority in their strat plan, their strategic plan, that's how I first got exposed to the severity, but also the proximity of human trafficking. And that's when we talked about, like, where could we put signs? And people had these ideas of where to put signs, but it was the most common places, the subway, like the parks, right? So what you're saying really resonates, that it is so much closer to all of us than we actually realize.
Realize.
Yeah.
And this community, obviously, we sit here in this beautiful studio sitting in Boca Raton, Florida. And
complaining about 60 degrees in
right.
January.
I know, like, how can we complain about
Yeah.
these things?
Yeah.
But at the same time, we find ourselves to a certain degree at the epicenter of such a issue that most of us, if we don't open our eyes and don't take a second, we'll just continue to kind of live in this kind of this fantasy world of, you know, of complacency, right? And that's the biggest thing that I'm always surprised about, even with what you just said, all the different signs and all the things that are being put out there for the public to be more conscious about this. And still there is just a lack of information that is really disseminating to a point where people really are realizing and saying, we really need to do something about this, because it's not going to just change on its own. And it's unfortunately getting worse and worse, you know, and as things like technology provide more of a platform for immediacy, you know, we live in a society about, you know, immediate gratification.
Yeah.
Those kinds of things, those resonate. And unfortunately, things like traffickers take advantage of that.
Yeah, and you know, it's about misinformation. It's about misleading our youth, right? I know my husband was very particular when we gave our kids devices to lock things down, as he called it, and they found workarounds.
They always will.
They literally found workaround, right? So I don't know, but I want to talk, taking a kind of step back from the severity of the discussion, and to talk about what type of change within you and the people that co-lead alongside you for this work. There are many things leaders could be doing. There are many things we could be doing with our life. We could be in for-profit, right? We could be getting a nice fat bonus right now, right? I've seen some executives get some really juicy bonuses, and I was like, I miss those days, right? But tell me about kind of that career journey for you from what you did before to what you do now, and kind of maybe one or two things that are the same in terms of characteristics and values, and then certain things that you had to honestly level up to meet the mission where it is.
Sure. No, I'm glad that you brought this up, because my journey has been very transformative in terms of where I started. I think I mentioned before, my career started out in architecture.
Really?
Interestingly enough, I studied in Mexico and then made my way back here to the United States, and then transformed into a career in technology. So I was actually doing work behind the scenes, programming, that kind of work. So I was not the kind of person that
you're the definition of pivot right here.
Yeah. We're talking 180 degrees.
Yeah.
And it was only through just kind of taking time to kind of understand where I thought my purpose in life really needed to be, and being more forward facing.
Yeah.
That's when I started to make that transition, still in the for-profit space, but now taking on roles that allowed me to be more in front of and engaging directly with people. And I think as a result of those engagements and the kind of work that I was doing in technology, that was connecting me with more social services organizations.
Interesting.
Because the technology that the company that I was working for really had a solution for some of these agencies that were challenged by lack of connection of data systems and being able to be effective in driving meaningful outcomes in those organizations. And so that was what really prompted me to start thinking about, like, what is it that I'm going to, what impact am I going to make? How can I make more of a human impact? And so that's when I made the transformation into nonprofit work. I work for a company called Child Rescue Coalition, which actually is based here in Boca Raton.
Yeah, I'm aware of them.
Yeah. So they provide a solution for law enforcement that allows them to track and detect those that are actively trading child sexual abuse material on the open internet. And so that was the way for me to take technology and nonprofit work and kind of bring those things together, and work with them for about 4 years. And it was an incredible experience, because it really exposed me to this issue. Because even before that, I was just as in the same situation as most people, terms of not being really knowledgeable about what the problem was in terms of human trafficking, exploitation, and in our own
It seems like that's an other person problem.
Correct. Yeah, it was outside. It was completely foreign topic. And so then, connecting with FLITE Center about 2.5 years ago was really that moment that I really realized that this was truly my way of having more of a purposeful way of life.
Yeah.
Like I really wanted to do something that went outside of where, the corporate mindset about just profit margins being the primary motivator. And it's like, how is it that I can apply my knowledge, my experience, because unfortunately I came from, and I say unfortunately, but fortunately also because it helped me be the person that I am. I come from a history of abuse, child abuse, and unfortunately a family that has also been affected by suicide. So I think those things are things that make me someone that has
uniquely suited.
Yeah. And I didn't know it at the time.
Yeah,
because I didn't know how all these pieces could come together. But how when you look back and you say, wow, all this was
it's
bringing
like the
me,
universe was preparing
it's all
you.
bringing me to this moment. And I feel like I have an opportunity with these experience, working with the people at FLITE Center that have the same kinds of history in trauma and lived experience to be able to really make a difference in this community.
Yeah. And for our listeners, some of you are going to watch this on YouTube and some of you are going to listen. When a person talks about their calling or what they're here to do on earth, their tone and tenor changes. And I literally just saw it with Alex.
Yes.
Right? Their tone, because he talked about all the other jobs he had. And then when he got into that rawness and that vulnerability, we shift into, I believe, our authentic selves.
Yes.
It happens to me when I talk about hard things, right? And this morning, I posted, it's funny you were saying about living your purpose and legacy is the word that comes to mind, right? Like, what's the impact that you're making in the world? I posted that, so I grew up in Trinidad, so third world country, in a village. Literally, I laugh and I say I came here with half a suitcase because my sister had the other half. And you're right, that those lived experiences are what shape us. Yeah. And I talked about this concept of legacy framed through different lenses. And so you've got the legacy that we are kind of trained to think about, right? The trust fund or the estate or the billions or whatever. Right. And then there's the legacy that redefines success, redefines how we are living a more fulfilling life, is that legacy of the impact. And a part of me really enjoys doing work that is impactful, like you, but I'm sure there's a part of you that's like, am I ever going to see true change, true fruition? And building on that, I want to ask you a question. So when I was at the department, I was on the DHS Fellows Program, and we visited all of the headquarters, for the most part, of the DHS components. So Department of Homeland Security is comprised of 22 components. A component is like your TSA or your Secret Service or whatever.
Right.
I remember at the time we visited in Chicago, the Secret Services offices there. And one of my fellows, my partners on this program, this leadership development program, he gave us a tour. And we went down into the basement of this building. And it was where they kept the staff that looked at the forensic data of the items seized, right? So probably that software that you're using, right? I'm getting chills talking about this, And we were talking after we visited, and it was just very serious work. But one of the things he said was every 6 months they had to cycle the analysts out. Because mental illness, trauma, because the trauma, because the heaviness of it on the human spirit impacted the way that they worked. And so for the work that you do and the things that you hear for some of us, it's just statistics, unfortunately. But if you were doing a case study, you have to talk about it in a way to evoke emotion, and donors, right? How do you balance what you need as a human yourself, given your past, to still show up for the mission, but ensure that you are psychologically safe?
Wow, I can't say enough about self-care.
Yeah.
Right? Sometimes we don't even consider that, you know, in our
Because
day-to-day.
the mission is higher, and because you have a higher calling, you burn out spectacularly.
That is a very, very, very common thing.
Yeah.
And I consider myself extremely, extremely fortunate that working for an agency that really takes that part of our job extremely seriously in terms of making sure that there is times when we're checking in with each other and with ourselves, and not second guessing the times that we need to take a step back.
Yeah.
Like I know that even with our frontline staff, those that are out there in the trenches, case managers, case workers, they have many times, like Fridays. Fridays typically is not a day for our staff to be seeing
People.
young clients.
Yeah.
Why? Because they want to give them more time Friday, Saturday, Sunday to come down and giving them an opportunity to really breathe, right? So that they can start the next week with an additional, you know, opportunity to do that. And that's so important.
It's imperative.
So important that people really see that as as a factor that can contribute both in a positive or a negative way if it's not taken seriously.
Yeah. And I think people equate labor with a product.
Yeah, right.
Like I worked and here's my business case, right? My 40-page, whatever. But labor can be emotional labor.
Yeah. How much it weighs on us. How much it weighs on us. And
wavering between feeling frustrated, helpless, outraged, all of the things.
Yeah.
Questioning spirituality. How could God, right? Bringing in God and like thinking, how could he right? Depending on the...
No, absolutely. Yeah. And I will be 100% transparent. The reason why you and I were supposed to talk earlier this month, and I needed to take some time. Actually, that was my time to take some time, because last year was a very challenging year. There was a lot going on, a lot that we needed to do. The mission was an extremely important factor for us to continue moving forward. We knew that we needed to meet certain milestones.
Yeah.
But I knew that I needed to take that time. And I'm glad that I did. And I'm glad that I had the support within our organization to say, you know what, do what you need to do, because your wellness is most important. And I think that's a testament to this whole thing, that we're not just machines.
Yeah.
You know, we have
cogs in the wheel.
Yeah, exactly. And many times we feel like that. We feel like we are that. And if we do see ourselves as people that need that time to kind of just come down and deflate, and that's an important thing to do, then I think we can continue to answer your question. How do you deal with these things day in and day out when you're dealing with such heavy topics?
How, when I worked in corporate and when I was kind of doing, I call it phase one, right, of my life, which is kind of, I call it in the matrix, right? And now kind of beyond it and doing my own thing, right? But my kids have a very different perspective of me now. And I think you have three kids.
I have three, yeah.
And as they grow older, it's harder to connect with them on certain things. Yeah. Because when they were younger, it was very much nurture. Are you fed? Are you clothed? Right?
Yeah, basics, yeah.
Right now, we're dealing with the intricacies of young adults who have access to all of the things and who, to some extent, are weighing their worth in the world or the things they want to do against what we're doing now.
Yeah.
But they've also seen the other side of us, right? How are you navigating with three kids, young adults, your trajectory? Because I feel like a part of this for you also is relearning your own strengths and having maybe different expectations of yourself as a dad with them. I
am so glad that you brought this up, because I don't think there's anything, most of us that are our parents would say that is the most gratifying thing that you can be is a parent, father or mother. And for me, that is, there's nothing more for me. And so with my kids, I've been very fortunate that they are very, very supportive, so much so that they have gotten into nonprofit work themselves, you know, and so they see the importance of having a purposeful life, making an impact.
You can totally shout them out if you want.
Yes, definitely. Yeah. Sebastian, Joshua, and Mariana, you guys are an amazing example of what this youth society really should be focused on, besides, all of the things that are availed to us in terms of access to technology, access to having a voice. What can you do with that voice? And I think they are truly a testament to what you can do. I'm always going to say great positive things, and most of us as parents will do that. But so my oldest son, he's in finance, and one thing he does, he started a nonprofit that is called Diversify Ventures, and his is all about providing a way for minorities and women in careers in finance to have more access to those kinds of opportunities.
That's close to my heart.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then my daughter, she started a nonprofit that is in this area of human trafficking, exploitation, and abuse. It's called HALT. So HALT is HT. I'm sorry, it's called HT. So it's HALT Trafficking, Exploitation, and Abuse. And her mission is to provide kids that are in middle school transitioning to high school information and ways that they can get involved.
That is the most vulnerable of us.
Yeah. So it's that transition into that high school years is when you're starting to think about what you might want to do with your life and how can you be more purposeful.
But also feeling other.
Yeah, exactly.
Whether your body's not where you wanted to, or you're comparing yourself to other people, or being, a little bullied, or that's where the breakdown happens.
Yeah. So, that's definitely something that is something so important.
Yeah.
And then to your question about connecting with them, I think I've been able to be very vulnerable with my kids. And
isn't that such a skill?
It is.
Our parents weren't. My parents were not vulnerable.
No.
They were stoic.
Oh yeah. So I, my parents, as most parents of that era, very old school,
very command control.
Keeping things inside, and that's why I say about mental health awareness.
Sure.
In our society right now is so much more important because of, again, social media, the desire to always be like the
on,
and FOMO, right? Fear of missing out.
Or if you don't respond to a text or something within like 5 minutes.
The anxiety, right? It's like we deal with so much anxiety, so much depression, not living in the present. I have a very good friend that is constantly trying to remind me, is like, the present is when you're in the present.
When you're present.
When you're present,
yes,
you're calm.
Yeah.
Because you're not thinking about what has happened in the past. That's done.
And the interaction is so much richer.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if we are constantly reminding ourselves that, then we are removing ourselves from those influences that are becoming things that are taking over our lives in a negative way, right?
How does one go about supporting causes that are big and scary and seemingly unfixable? What are 3 kind of innate things? And I'm not talking about like just donating. That's a given.
Yeah.
Please donate.
Yes.
Right? If you have the means. But some people don't have the means to donate, right? Some people are not financially able. And I think that holds them back because they think, I can't donate a huge sum,
right,
so therefore I won't.
Yeah.
When we know that every little bit
counts.
Right.
Yeah. But listen, and volunteering, we obviously the 3 T's, time, talent, and treasure.
Yeah. Any
combination of those 3, are important things. And that will fluctuate throughout your life.
What does that look like in a real day? Like, say I came to you and I was like, Alex, I got 3 T's.
Yeah. What can you do?
Yeah. What does that look like to a student listening or their parents or whatever, right?
Well, just to apply it to the work that FLITE Center does, one of the programs that we do to have individuals, organizations getting involved is a program called our Essential Home Kits. Or Welcome Home Kit program. And what this is that it allows for organizations or individuals to contribute to bring together the items that typically are associated with a youth coming into their first home, their first apartment, which are the things that normally
we take for granted
that we're just going to have pots and pans and linens and personal hygiene items and those kinds of things. But those are the things that, those that are coming out of foster care when they are turning 18, they don't have those things. They're usually coming out with that kind of that traditional concept of being this black bag full of their clothes, all of their belongings, and they're out on the street because you don't realize that when
it's like a secondary form of abandonment.
It is.
Right?
And think about the trauma that's associated with that. You're 18 and most of us that live, in a, relatively normal, quote unquote, normal life, don't think about all those essential life skills that are lacking from those that have been going from home to home to home.
Wow.
The statistic is, for us and most agencies, is that throughout their lifetime, those that are going through foster care, somewhere between 7 to 9 times
I was
in
going to
their
say
life
6,
is how many times they're moving from one
and
home
I think
to another.
that level of psychological insecurity, emotional, like all of it, right? Like everything is on shaky ground.
Yeah.
And then you're told to take flight.
Good analogy.
Right.
You use the take flight. That's what we say all the time.
Just take flight. And
yeah.
it's like, okay, my 18-year-old, my daughter just turned 18 in October, and the flight is shaky, and she's had a pretty solid run. And we were at a doctor's appointment, and she looks at me to fill out the form, and I was like, no, you can fill out the form. But you're absolutely right. Even with her upbringing and background.
Yeah.
My turning 18 was completely different. I was working 2 jobs and like putting myself through college and so forth, right? My experience was different, but part of our work was to make sure their experience was different.
Yeah.
But what I'm hearing is our kids who've had this normal, quote unquote, or privileged, right, family upbringing are still shaky, much less those who've had.
Imagine?
No.
Can you imagine?
It breaks my heart.
Yeah,
it really,
and that's
really
the thing,
does.
when we see our youth that are coming into our center, and you look at this, the challenges that they're facing, and you just don't really realize to what degree that exists in their whole history.
Tell me why that makes them. To me, it's obvious because I have, done training and stuff in this. But tell the listener why that particular person is so much more vulnerable and at risk.
Well, yeah, I mean, because obviously if they haven't had the influence of some kind of parental figure, if they haven't had a mentor, and that's what we help to serve, is having life and success coaches, coaches who are filling in that gap of what was lacking throughout those years. Yeah. And again, when you're starting out this process later on in life, it takes a lot longer. And so for us, it's important for us to have the opportunity to start to engage with those youth early on, because typically...
You mean before they turn 18?
Correct.
Yes.
Yeah. So typically our age group is 18 to 25.
Yeah.
But we work with an organization called ChildNet, and ChildNet is the agency of, they're the lead agency for youth in foster care, particularly in Broward County, but also in Palm Beach. And so even at age 16, we start to have a connection with those youth before they've aged out, because then now we've had
You're building that trust with them, and that,
even before, so that when they turn 18, that transition is more seamless.
There are many things we could talk about. The 3 things I talk about are leading courageously, living authentically, and redefining success. For the folks that are listening, and I will tell you, a lot of us that end up, and I wouldn't say I do nonprofit work, but I work with a lot of nonprofit leaders. Like, that's where my heart is. Given my background and the things important to me, finding folks like yourself and folks like it really is part of my purpose is to empower their voices, right? I had an offsite, a retreat last year with, was it the year before? Right, because it's January. And it was 12 nonprofit leaders from across the country doing spectacular work, hard work. And in my case, it was all women, and they were all at different stages, I would say, of burnout. And most of them were probably midlife, right? So late 40s, maybe early 60s. And the one thing that they all had in common was those three things, kind of your same trajectory.
Yeah.
You redefined success to sort of create a pivot in a career where what you were doing was tangentially and really directly impacted a different mission.
Yeah.
You gave yourself sort of permission to be curious about what the other side of that looked like.
Yeah.
And you went and sort of started and then moved into roles that felt better and better and stronger, right?
Yeah.
In terms of leading courageously, people always think that when we talk about leading, it's like leading other people. Sometimes it's just leading yourself.
Yeah, sure.
Right? Leading yourself and sort of opening.
And keeping yourself open to the
Yes.
possibilities.
Yes.
Yeah.
And for me, volunteering, because I knew as a working mom, as an executive, with a commute, right? Like trying to do my MBA part-time, like all of these things.
Balancing.
Right. There was no balance. Yeah. It was like, what's going to fall off the table today? But it was important to me to give the thing that was the richest thing I could give, which was my brain, my brain power. So for me, that meant serving on boards with UN Women, right? And I think if you had to give like a recipe to a busy executive or leader, for me it was, what am I passionate about? And to your point, it really is our past versions of ourselves.
Yeah.
So for me, it's women of color, women in general, in underserved communities.
Yeah.
And for me, the thing that changed my life was education, access to mentorship, just empowering women around me, because I didn't have that frame of reference.
Yeah.
So those are the things that I gravitate towards, right? Younger versions of me and helping them. So that was thing one for me.
Yeah.
Thing two was starting small. So maybe if I couldn't serve on a board,
Yeah. Right.
right, I could do something like lead a workshop in my level of expertise at the time, strategic planning, years ago when I started this, maybe 10, 15 years ago, to lead one workshop, one night a quarter.
Yeah.
Right? And then if we're talking about living authentically, I love that you brought up the word vulnerability, because without you emoting your fears and your story with me and our listeners, that would feel flat. As big and as impactful as this mission is, sometimes it takes one story.
Right. It has to connect to something.
Correct.
Yeah.
And I think that if you were to give people like a recipe to tune into their higher purpose, I suspect it would smell and look the same as what I just talked about. But what would you say to them?
Well, I can only apply it to my own
For sure.
experience. And I really attribute this journey getting to the place that it is right now predominantly because I come from a very matriarchal family. Both of my grandfathers.
Such a good perspective.
Yeah, and both of my grandfathers passed away. One, my father's father passed away before I was even born, so I didn't even know him.
Yeah.
My mother's father passed away when I was 5, so I hardly really knew him. So as you can probably imagine, both of my grandmothers had to pull up their bootstraps and really
And
take...
matriarch is the word.
Matriarch is the word because
Yes.
they were very, very strong women.
They had to lean on all of that masculine energy to lead the family.
And we're talking large families.
Yes.
One was 6 and the other one's 7.
My dad is one of 11.
Yeah.
My mom is one of 5.
Well, we come from places
Listen,
in
I
the world
have
where you
52 first cousins. I told people I didn't need to make friends
no, you had it all
until
built
my
in.
30s. I just raised a flag and said, who wants to do? And then 5 cousins were like, Mimi. So I didn't need friends.
Yeah. So very much so. So I grew up, traveling down to Colombia, which is where my family is from, and visiting both of my families on both sides. In particular, on my father's side, my grandmother on my father's side, also very, very strong woman. And I think that has been one of the influences for me. I think that has been so important for me to be, I think, as empathetic as I think, because I'm an empath by nature. Yeah. But I think that was by nature and by nurture, just being in an environment that showed me.
Such a good perspective.
Right? That being strong is not about being masculine.
Yeah.
It's right. strength comes from within, regardless of
gruff.
who you are. Yeah, exactly. So I think that is, if there's a recipe, I think is be open to being influenced in a positive way by all the things that you have in your life, and be thankful and grateful for those things, because those are the things going to be formative for you.
Sure.
And keeping yourself open.
Yeah.
Like I look back at that trajectory and I say like, wow, it's like truly it was something that really generated the place. It was hard. Lots of pain, a lot of things that I didn't understand at the time when I was going through it, but I don't regret a second of it now, because it has made me the person that I am and put me in the right place at the right time to be able to do the work that I'm doing. And I can only ask God that he continue to bless me to continue forward and be in a position where I can have this positive
and to have that
influence.
strength and that resolve to continue, right? Like, I feel like there's so many things, and I'm empowering and coaching people has always been my thing. And I think that when it comes to human experiences like this, that create overwhelm, shame, pain, overwhelm of compassion within us, we want to shy away because we're primed to fight or flight, right? And so if we think we are unable to process the bigness of something, and I remember when I had my daughter, we lived in Maryland. Alyssa was maybe 6 months, and she was, it was winter. We lived in, there was legit winter, and we got a text from a neighbor on a group chat, and they worked for Fair Girls. And Fair Girls is another nonprofit in Maryland. I don't know if they're national, that dealt with human trafficking.
Okay.
And, I tell the story, and only now am I able not to like really tear up.
Yeah.
So I remember late at night, it was like 9 p.m. I was in bed getting ready to go to sleep, and I got this group text, and it says, hey, they just rescued little girls. Like I'm talking about 6 months to like 4 years, right? And they had nothing. Like they needed clothes and Pampers, and I remember just packing everything I could find of Alyssa's, because one of our neighbors was just coordinating. She like literally opened her minivan, and like people were just dumping stuff in there, because at that hour of the night and so forth, they just had the need. And that was the first time. So, you talk about echoes of things that we've done in the past. This is the funniest story, not funny, haha, but how Alex and I met is hysterical. My neighbor has the same name as Alex. It's Alex Ortiz, and hers is Alexandra, and you are Alejandro. And so Alex Ortiz pops up on my LinkedIn as somebody I should know. And I was like, why is my neighbor's name popping up? I know her, we're connected. And I clicked I was like, maybe she got hacked. I don't know. And then your picture and profile comes up, and I was like, well, that's not my Alex. But I saw the human trafficking stuff, and I'm always intrigued by that, given my past work with DHS. So I scanned through, and I was like, oh, we have like 20 people in common. You're in South Florida. And I made a note in my head. Like, it's one of those, like, file it away that if I ever run into you, I'll mention the work that I did. Yeah. And sort of do a handout. Literally this is like the Monday. The Wednesday morning, we're at a local chamber Christmas party. Yeah. And I'm, chatting to the lady next to me, and I swivel and I see you, and I look at your name, and it was like so shocking.
You're like, what are you doing here?
I did say that. Yes. I said, you're Alex Ortiz. And you were like, uh-huh. And I was like, but it felt like one of those otherworldly experiences. Yes, serendipitous. And I was like, and the first thing I said is, I'm going to have you on my podcast. But this is how stuff happens. Yeah. Like, right? All the time. Yeah. And so you will find glimpses of what it is you're supposed to do outside of the thing that you're doing. You didn't see my air quotes. I just gave air quotes. I forgot. But you will find glimpses of it in the things that move you. Yeah. And whether it's homelessness or period poverty or women's empowerment or human trafficking or elder care, or elder abuse, like whatever it is in the world, neonatal care, like whatever it is. I feel like every one of us owes it to ourselves to kind of, to your point, just get really quiet and pay attention to what it is that moves us in the direction of the thing we're supposed to help change, even if it's tiny.
Yeah, it's incredible. Like just the little minor tweaks that we make.
These little glimpse coincidences that really aren't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, they're meant to be. And I really totally subscribe that things are truly meant to be. And if we open ourselves to those things, we will find ourselves following this path that whether we believe that, you know, things are intentional or not, that they're leading towards something bigger and greater.
Yes.
As long as you avail yourself to it.
You know, I started this podcast and I had an idea of what it would be. And I'm giving off the whatever vibe I'm giving off, which is a lot of nonprofit founders are falling in my circle. And I love that stuff. And I'm like, oh my goodness, like here we are. But what I love about it is you all to a person have come from traditional backgrounds to do the work that you're doing.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I mean, before this, like years ago, if you would have asked me what a nonprofit was, I would not have the answer to give to you because it just didn't resonate. It wasn't even in my
And you couldn't
purview.
even translate the skills.
No, not at all. Like even before, like being in architecture, to see this trajectory to where I am today, it just feels so incredible.
Yeah.
Right? Because like it just wasn't processed at any level.
I always tell people, look for patterns in your life. You've always been doing a thing that is your God's calling, whether it's writing, because you need grant writers, whether it's speaking, because you need people that can evoke emotion, right? Somewhere along the line, you've been doing it, whether it's organizational skills to pack the home kits.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't always have to be these A-level type competencies.
Yeah.
Right?
No, and for me, like people that...
And that's what our children need to learn too.
Oh, totally.
Yeah.
Because they think that they have to have all the knowledge,
all the
all
things
the experience,
buttoned
all
up.
right now
Messy
to do
action.
anything. Yes.
Yeah.
And rather than taking one step at a time. And one thing I will say is that, you know, as this podcast grows and grows and gets more influence out there, I would hope that there would be people even from my childhood or from like when I was in high school that would be like, that's not Alex. That's not the Alex I knew, because I was a very, very shy person. Like one person that this whole thing would have scared me so much to be like, you know.
I wouldn't say I'm shy, but I'm very introverted.
I'm very introverted.
I'm better on a one-on-one.
I'm very good at being kind of having that duality, but that's not something that I grew up having. I was always much more on the introverted side and not getting into the extroverted side, but it was only
And now you are out there like spreading the word and at the events.
And I feel that, and I feel very fortunate that I can be and be a mouthpiece for this purpose and be able to be an influence and be in front of people and show that, you know, you don't have to be a perfect public speaker to be able to have that kind of a good influence.
And I think this is where our core values come in, right? Like if your core value is compassion or humanity or kindness, like these are traits inherently, and we can all have different core values. And that's how we get to show up in this tapestry and do different parts of the work, right? So I love that. Alex, where can people find you, both you personally and also to learn more about the FLITE Center?
Sure. Well, you can definitely find us online. We're at FLITE Center. So that's FLITE center.org. We're on Instagram. We're on Facebook. We're on LinkedIn. So you can find us there. We do a lot in terms of promoting. We post things about events that are going on. Again, you know, this month being such an important time during the year, Human Trafficking Prevention and Awareness Month. But every month there's things that we are helping to promote. You know, we have in May is Mental Health Awareness Month. Yeah. So, you know, just stay connected with us. The volunteer opportunities that we have always that are available. I was talking about
got a lot of kids needing those volunteer hours.
Yes. And people, you know, they come up to us. And so, you know, I'm available. My email address is alex@flight FLITEcenter.org. So definitely connect with me. I'm online as well. Always
and FLITE
available.
is spelled FLITE.
Yes. And so for those that don't know, FLITE is an acronym. It stands for Florida Independence Training and Education Center. So it is an acronym.
Yes.
But we do incorporate the whole aviation concept
Yes,
and
yes.
etymology into it, because we, as you had
Take
said,
flight.
is taking flight. It's our
I
youth
didn't even
take
read
flight.
that.
Yeah.
I just,
no,
yeah,
it
it's
just came out
intuitively.
naturally. So,
Yeah.
but we do say that our
Yeah.
youth do take flight in the services and programs. So
Yeah.
I didn't say this in the beginning, but what is it exactly that we're providing is, access to things like housing, employment, education, health and wellness. So just think about, holistically what a youth coming out of foster care or human trafficking survivors really truly need to be successful, to be independent out there and making that transition.
And I will tell you, to add to that, but I'm sure it's inherent in everything you've said, we are having a loneliness epidemic in
My God, I'm
the
glad you
most
brought-
connected time of our lives. Right? I mean, to send a note, I don't have to send a homing pigeon, right? 4 weeks later, Alex is getting my note. And people are lonely. And if you think about the youth that you've described, that the level of despair to some extent. And so we also, as a community, have to find avenues to collaborate and show that we care for each other. In ways that may not, to your point, seem so obvious.
Yeah. I am so glad that you brought up the word loneliness, because it's something that just recently I was talking to somebody about that. Just relationships.
Yeah.
Not just romantic relationships, but relationships as a whole, just become so fragmented because of the ease with which we can have many different relationships at the same time. But yet we still are suffering with loneliness, and it's just incredible.
It
because
feels surface level to some extent.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. And having deep relationships with people tend to be few and far between because of it's a cookie cutter.
And I will tell you, you don't use a skill.
Yeah, right.
You lose it.
You lose it. Yes.
I coming out of the pandemic, I felt myself having a hard time, really holding eye contact.
Yeah.
And my kids now, I'm like, listen, shifty eyes, you better look at me in my eyes when you're talking to me. But I feel like that is or shaking hands or having connection is imperative. And, I went to the YMCA down the street, had their grand reopening. And Jason Hagensick was a guest, and I went to support them. And I was stunned that existed in my neighborhood. I mean, I knew it was there, but I'd never made the time to go. But now I'm like, oh, in my position, they gave me a mic, which is a dangerous thing. But it's a way to sort of create these cross integration connections. Yes, that who knows, right? I mean, I think it's just amazing. Well,
and I think for people to find other outlets, right? There are so many opportunities of things to do. Like, for instance, one thing that I started doing again that I was doing last year, I started doing yoga, right? Mindfulness, right? Keeping yourself mindful of yourself, of your surroundings, the people that you're connecting with, positives and negative relationships that you might have. All those things go into what I was saying before about self-care.
I love that.
And it's something actually at FLITE Center promotes. We actually have a thing called Yoga for Change, where we have somebody on our clinical side who is giving yoga classes, not only to
and these are life skills, man. These aren't just
No.
a fad.
No, it's not a passing thing. This is something that can be instantiated as just part of your well-being as a whole.
I, as a mid-40-year-old, totally pulled my back doing yoga.
Did you really?
So please work out safely.
Be safe and stretch.
I'm into meditation right now, because that just entails laying really, really still. Alex, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much.
And being so open and honest. And
always.
we appreciate kind of the level of character that it takes for you guys to do this work day in and day out. I do. And I hope that people that listened here really get that this is, I call founders and nonprofits doing God's work, because really, sometimes it can feel thankless.
Yeah, no, it does many times, right? But for those that have the desire to get into this, push forward. Never feel
And
like...
for those that support and uplift and donate and show up, kudos to you too. You know what I mean?
We could not do the work that we do unless
sure.
we had the support out there from those that really see the value of this work. So thank you for those that do.
Thank you. So everyone listens, if you're moved as I am by this conversation, please attend FLITE Center's events. It's an opportunity to learn, connect, and kind of dig in more and support more of what they do. Follow their work. Alex listed all of the stuff, and I will totally put links and so forth when I post this to the YouTube for those of you that are watching. And share this episode with someone that needs it and donate.
Yes.
Right? So 3 takeaways I have from this conversation. 1, awareness is power. Ducking our heads in the sand never worked for anyone, right? The reason we're here is our ancestors fought like hell, right? And so understanding the realities of human trafficking, understanding how you can engage in a way that feels right for you, depending on who you are as a human and your level of empathy and like what works for you in your mental health or not. But don't just act like it's not happening right under our noses. Support vulnerable youth, whether it's donating, volunteering, simply being a mentor, or honestly, for me, I think it's going to give me a new perspective, honestly, when I'm walking about and noticing things. Because if you're not looking for it, you're not going to see it.
Yeah, know the signs.
And redefining leadership, right? As Alex said, it's not just about skills, it's about purpose. So think about how you can use your voice, your platform, your organizations that you work for, your kids, your family members if you don't have kids, the support systems and networks that you have, and how can you sort of not only spread the word, but become your own type of advocate. We need all kinds.
And I'd like to also say
Sure.
is that, and I wouldn't be true to this, is that the National Human Trafficking Hotline, for those that have that opportunity at that see something, to say something, the number is 888-337-37-888. It's the easiest way to remember that number, 888-337-37-888. And also the 988, the suicide hotline.
Yeah.
Those things are important for people to remember.
Yeah, shout out to my friend Jane Lassiter who worked on that. All right, so if you're ready to join our global community and listen to courageous leaders, check out Beyond the Quo, where we've already done the status quo, so we're trying to go beyond, right? And if you are a leader, a woman, specifically a woman of color, you're looking for community, please consider joining the Rising Beyond Power Collective. I will put the link to that in the video, and we will see you next week. Thanks for joining us.